Previously in X-Men will return August 1st, but for the time being, this is previously in comics. And I am grateful to be joined by my friend David Cutler. David, how are you?
Very good, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you. And just to backtrack for a second, previously in comics, before the issue that we're about to look at tonight and before the subject matter of tonight, Strange Tales 114, Stan Lee asks for a almost Captain America first appearance. Like Captain America has not been used by that publishing company since the 1950s. Right now, Marvel. Back then, it was Atlas. Before that, it was Timely. And during the Atlas era, they tried some Captain America to revive him. It didn't take, so he'd been shelved for about a decade. And Stan Lee says, "Hey, Jack, can you give me a Captain America story-ish? Like, let's test the waters." So for Strange Tales 114, they bring back a guy who's dressed as Captain America. And it's sort of suspenseful throughout the whole issue to see if it really is him. It is not him. And then about a month or so later, they bring out Avengers #4, which is like a legitimate return of Captain America, which is really cool to see. Here's the cover, of course, by Jack the King Kirby here on the left. Maybe one of the most iconic comic book covers of all time. And then on the right, there is the Avengers classic cover by the amazing Arthur Adams. And I have like a million things to say about both. But let's first talk about you and how you are and what you're up to.
Very good. I'm so bad at talking about myself. I'm so bad at it.
Okay.
What am I up to? I'm starting a new thing tomorrow that I can't talk about. It's not Captain America and it's not X-Men, but it is Marvel. So that's what I'm doing. I'm starting a new thing tomorrow.
That's awesome. When you say you're starting it, meaning you're starting the work on it, like the penciling side?
I'm expecting the script. So normally my first day is reading the script and then having like a panic about all the things that I haven't drawn before and I have to wrap my head around drawing. And there's going to be a lot in this. It's different for me. I'm worried about the tone. Like part of me is worried that I'm the wrong artist for it, that maybe like I should have been like, someone else probably would, but I'm not in a position to be turning down Marvel work. So
yeah,
I said yes, but we'll see how it goes. Also, if the inker that I get is the inker that I'm supposed to have, he's legendary, but I'm going to look different underneath this guy. Like it's not, I've never seen him make somebody who draws in my neighborhood. So we'll see if it ends up being him.
Well, I'm very excited for when the announcement comes to hear what the project is, and then for maybe you to come back and tell me and some of our viewers which things were in the script that scared you maybe the most, or maybe the things that you thought were going to be scary but you were able to handle. I imagine, putting myself in your shoes, that every time I would get a script, I would think, hey, there's someone who can do this better, because there are just unbelievable people out there. But as I would say to anyone on the other side, if it's like, yeah, no one else can do the thing you do, that's you. Like your drawing voice is a unique thing, and it doesn't exist in the world without you. So let's get more of it, whether you think it's good or not. You have a unique point of view and a unique way of seeing things that you can communicate through your artwork. So let's have that, and let's make that part of the world, make it a better place. So I'm looking forward to seeing whatever it is this project is.
So sometimes though, like the instrument you have is the wrong instrument for the job. Sometimes it is like you pick something up and you're just like, wow, this is totally dissonant. But we'll see. I don't actually know what the tone is, so I'm going by the character and the writer and whatnot. So
it's fun to think like that. Sometimes we as people who make things that are visual, like you serve as an artist, you serve as a creator, as a driving force. Like it is your voice. Other times you're in service of someone else. You're a craftsperson who is part of the crew of that project. I'm working on something right now where it, other than the fact that it's Canadian and I'm Canadian, there isn't much I have in common with the subject matter and the story. And I'm asked to do things in a style that are not suited for the strength I've displayed so far. But man, like I love the idea of a challenge. So let's be a different kind of artist for a bit. Again, let's serve and broaden a little. And yeah, they could have hired 100 other people on my street that could do as good or a better job. But sometimes that's just the way I think it's going to go. So I'm excited for you. And new projects, there's such an enthusiasm when you get a new project, like to play in that new world, right? New toys. So I'm excited for you, man. You're gonna have to tell me about it later. Like not necessarily today, I mean, but down the road.
Yeah. Well, I also want to say, just to like hype it up a bit more, that not only is the possible inker legendary, the writer is legendary. So I'm like the bit player. So really, it's going to be this guy in the inker show. But we'll see what I can bring to it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm very excited. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your first interaction, or like how you did you ever fall in love with Captain America?
I would say yes.
And then
to the
how?
point that he was the only, it's almost like a cliche for a 90s nerd kid to say, but like the Avengers were goofballs when I was a kid. Like if you told me that in the modern times they would outsell the X-Men, that they'd have like the biggest movie of all time, I would never have believed you. Nothing could have been further from possible, except for I really liked Captain America. And I was thinking about it, but I don't know when or how I would have first come to know the character. It's almost like I always did, but that doesn't make sense because there was no cartoon on, there was no movie. But I when I first started getting comics, the first books I got were Spider-Man and Captain America, and I never had a moment of who is this guy that I can remember. Like I started reading during the one Marvel legend I have who isn't X-Men or Spider-Man is Captain America, but I always have him as Cat Wolf because the first Captain America comics I read were the Cat Wolf.
Oh, really?
Storyline where he turns into a werewolf. So he's always there with the werewolf head.
Yeah.
Looks badass to me. I don't know.
Sure, man. I gave
that
figure out to a friend.
It's also funny that like I'm not. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who's less like rah America,
right?
But I've always loved the character.
I think same here, and happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July to those who celebrate. In that context, here we are on the 4th of July. It's no coincidence that that I chose to talk about Captain America's revival today, and that this is two Canadians here, right? And I think that's actually truthfully part of the appeal of the character. It has nothing to do with rah USA. It's a person who has their principles, who believes in an ideal, and is willing to like. He won't even die. Like he's dead. He's not staying dead. He's coming back from dead for his ideal, and his ideal is something that is universal. It's that people can be better.
Like, you can't get around that he wears the flag of a nation.
Can't get around it.
A nation with an ugly history and ugly beginnings, but also that has like, the Declaration of Independence was accidentally written in a way that eventually judges had to go like, I guess kind of sort of black people are people, I guess kind of sort of.
Right. I think that's a really good point, and it's hard sometimes to come to terms with the jingoism and the flag waving that's right up front, and then I think about counterpoints and whatnot, and I'm assuming you watched, of course, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And there was a really good conversation, between Isaiah Bradley and the character who has now been retconned as being a Captain America in the 1950s. Like they experimented on black soldiers, and so he was a super soldier in the comics of Captain America. And he's talking to Falcon, and Falcon basically says like, no one gets to tell him whether or not he can fight or shouldn't fight for his country. Like he took a very strong oppositional point of view that it was up to him whether he wanted to fight for his country or not, and what that means to him. And I think I kind of hold to that. It's like Yeah, no country's ever going to have a perfect record, and if someone wants to do heroic things and save lives and be honest and try and do their best and bring out the best in others and save the planet, like I'm all for it. Um, yeah, it's an interesting one for sure, for sure.
He always ends up in the modern context apologizing for the costume and apologizing for the connection. And I feel like that's how I am as a Captain America fan. Like I'm always like, yeah, I know, but it's a good looking costume and it's a good looking flag at the end of the day.
And I am grateful for all the good things that American culture produces, for sure, for sure. Like I'm into all of it, and all the best things that can come out of any country are contribute to the world. So I'm grateful for this one. Um, it's looking at these two covers side by side. I really love, like, Arthur Adams is one of my favorite cover artists of all, and I love that he doesn't even try to outdo the dynamism of the Kirby cover, the often homaged Kirby cover. It's so quirky. It has some really weirdness to that Cap's left arm and how the shield sort of sits. Is it partially behind his right leg? Is it partially beside? It's all wonky. I've seen a couple other artists redo it and kick its butt. Like Steve McNiven did a great one. I think it was Joe Jusko, the painter. He did an amazing version of it where they make it really work. They make it sing without changing much. But it just, for whatever reason, this is, to me, Kirby really understands that it's not just side-scrolling comics. Like, comics really come out at you, and he does it to the max.
See, this is why I defend Rob Liefeld.
Uh, on here, you don't have to defend. You can sing whatever song you want, man.
I just mean, like, he gets so much flack for that one Captain America image.
Oh,
well, I mean, he gets so much flack for literally everything, but that the giant ass Captain America image, I had that on my wall, man. I thought that was fucking cool when I was 13.
Yeah,
I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. But the same thing is going on in his image of like, where's the arm behind the shield? It's right. It's a very like Kirby commitment to the reality. Like whatever looks good at the popping glance of like, you see the cover on the rack or whatever, and it leaps at you, and you can nitpick it to death when you get it home, like tomorrow later on. But you already bought it. You got it because it's exciting stuff.
Yeah. I've said before, my take on Liefeld is I don't have the enthusiasm, but I do see his enthusiasm on the page. I see his energy, and his excitement for it. I find that both Kirby and Liefeld share a couple characteristics, like the dynamics, but I also don't think Kirby spends time fixing. He's sort of famous for not having the eraser in use. It's all pencil. He like has the idea and he draws it, from side to side or corner to corner, and whatever he drew, he's moving on to the next thing. And I find Liefeld is similar to my eye. Like I find he focuses on a section of the drawing, does that thing. Like he spends a moment or two in layouts and doesn't change.
Well, from what I understand, like part of the reason why his proportions and stuff are so wacky is he does like a fairly detailed thumbnail at like this size or something, blows it up full size, and then he traces it and does the detail. And he's loyal to the stuff that he jotted down at a much smaller scale. So it gets skewed as it goes up. But also, I think.
Oh, please.
No, you go ahead. We don't need to keep talking to Liefeld for the full.
Actually, you do, and then I'm going to take it askew for a second. But please finish what you're saying.
The other thing I was going to say is that the other similarity I see is they have such strong them design sensibilities, and for a while in the 70s and the 80s, Kirby would get made fun of for all those chunky hands and weird costume details with all the like zigzag lightning bolts that have no meaning, and like people would say would disrupt the form and da 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 da. Well, I don't know where Liefeld got the giant shoulder pads and the enormous like neck bracer things that have like some kind of breather on the front and the pouches everywhere. I don't know where that came from. I don't know like what inspired him to do that, but I think it's like super unique. It's super exciting, and like Cable is still around, man, and he still looks like a Liefeld character.
Yes.
Anyway, that's Liefeld.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I was gonna say, do you ever watch Jason Latour's The Drawl stuff on YouTube? He does and on Instagram he does these animated, or I guess it's
Oh, I
versions
saw
of his
one
drawings.
like literally the other day, but I can't remember what it was. But it was the first one I saw.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because you get to see another person's process and how much he iterates on his initial sketch. And that's all I was bringing it up for, was like this idea
Okay.
that Kirby is not iterating on every sketch to change it, to tweak each limb and the angle and the head and whatnot. And I don't think Liefeld is either. When you watch someone like Latour, who just is redoing composition constantly, for better or for worse.
Well, yeah, that's how I function as an artist, especially now digitally, where it's so much easier to do that.
Right.
But yeah, I would look like Liefeld if I well, not really as exactly the same, but if I went with the first thing I put down, I would certainly be in that camp.
If I did the first thing I put down, all my poses would be super awkward and not, maybe not that they're not already, but they would be worse. I love drawing with pencil on paper and ink on paper, so I often start sketching there, but then I would scan that and then tweak that digitally.
That's what I used to do before I got a Cintiq.
Right.
Now I do everything on, there's not, like, I don't even know if I have paper around.
I love the paper, and I don't want to take my joy out of it. So, but once I get the pose the way I like, and then I'll kind of do as much of the pencil as I can digitally, then print it and either light box it or blue line print that and ink over. I love the energy of inking. I love the black on white paper, and I have always enjoyed when I get to sell pieces.
That
feels good.
It sucks that, like, when I started working at Marvel, it's like 2 projects in, maybe on the 3rd project, I went completely digital. So I have no originals. And it was the first time when I was getting like real interest for the original pages. And I'm just like, yeah, they don't exist. But
have you thought of, I mean, is this crazy to think that you take your digital pencil and print it blue line and then just ink it while you're watching a movie?
My printer is too awful. It's an old brother. I need to replace it, but like even in its prime, it was never able to pull through a Bristol board
right
consistently. Like it would just mess up. So I was thinking of doing that actually for this next project because I'm only penciling.
Right.
But I just know it'll go so much faster if I don't, and it'll look better if I don't, because the time that I save with the speed of the perspective tools and stuff, I can tweak because I find the more dynamic a pose I do, the more off the mark my initial head placement is. Like it's just not coming out of the proper route. Just being able to grab it and move it that like millimeter has saved me a million times.
So maybe for Fan Expo or something, like, again, take one of those pages that's pencil that's done, go to a print house that will do it for you, spend the couple bucks to get that thing printed onto Bristol, and then ink it while watching a movie, and then you sell that for a good chunk of money at Fan Expo to, I don't know, potential buy. I don't know. I'm just talking silly.
I should do something because now that I don't have like this big portfolio of real pages on my table is getting like sparser and sparser. So I need to do something. I need to like do a bunch of prints or I don't know, something.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do. Conrad, how are you, sir? Hope you're well and enjoying this beautiful hot Tuesday night in Richmond Hill. Conrad and I share a hometown. He says, do you think live digital sketches at a show would sell? Like you could have a few new drawings to sell at a show and you could send the original digital to somebody.
Maybe. It depends on the audience. Younger audiences, sure, I think would buy into that. My roommate is also an artist, and she does commissions digitally exclusively. But like her audience is more of a modern video gamey anime type, like, and they're cool with that. Like, to them, like, having the exclusive large file is the same as like having a physical object. I don't think superhero comic readers of any age are fully there yet, if they ever will be. Like, they if they're buying a piece of art, I think they want to have something physical. So like some big artists will print off their digitally pencil and inked page and get a service to do a certificate of authenticity. This will be the only time it's printed, and they'll get. I don't think they'll get like the kind of money they would that if it was a truly original piece of art, but they do get something that makes it worthwhile to do that. So
Right.
I don't know.
Back to Captain America.
That
He appeared on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when I was a little kid. There was an episode that he was in that I really liked. And there was a Secret Wars action figure of him, of course, from the 84 line or whatever time period that was from Mattel. So I knew him right away, but I also think he's the kind of character that you get instantly. Like, there's no explanation needed. All the interesting things about him come after. You just look at him, you see how he moves, you see the shield, you see the color, and you're like, okay, I'm in on that. Now let's get a little bit more as we go. But I would think everything you need to know about the guy is like just right there. Just a man of action, which is super cool. Did you ever pick up any of those Avengers classics, by the way? Avengers Classic?
No, I'm not an Avengers guy. Like, to this day, I've read a few runs of Avengers, but
I love the idea of getting my hands on Kirby comics. But even when this was coming out in 2007, I
wasn't even aware of it.
Arthur Adams cover, I was like, okay, I'm getting that. But I only bought a couple issues, and I don't think it ran very long anyway, which is too bad. But here we go into the actual first appearance, or the first Silver Age appearance of Captain America, which is super exciting. I wrote in the description that it was his first Marvel appearance, and I put an asterisk next to it, of course, implying that he originally appeared in a Timely comic, and then he appeared in an Atlas comic. But this was his first time appearing, the actual Captain America, not an imposter. First time he appeared in a Marvel comic. And these are scans of an actual book. This is not a digital recolored version, so you can see the wear and tear on this thing. I'm going to take you and I off the view so we can just look at the beautiful thing here.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Messy. Look at that thing. I'm such a fan of these ads. I always love the old ads. They're just ridiculous. But I do not own a copy of this in its, in any kind of newsprint form. All the copies I have are oversaturated on glossy paper. I didn't think you and I were going to read the whole thing word for word. Did you want to do a word for word reading?
I mean, not word for word. You've read this before, yes?
I have, and there's a lot of schlock in here.
Yeah, it's a Stan Lee comic, so I don't know how many like narration boxes are even super necessary. But yeah. I didn't read this ahead of time, and I haven't read it since I want to say 2006. So I wouldn't mind knowing what's going on.
Sure.
So whatever we skip, you can guide me through, let's say.
Okay. Well, you're right. I mean, you can even see just in this this I don't know what you call this, like a narration box. Like, you just see he says a magnificent milestone in the Marvel age. It's pretty ridiculous. I do have a crush on these splash pages that are kind of like secondary covers that aren't part of the story, but a sort of a summary of the story. Like, this is Captain America coming out of, I guess, the past, right? He's coming out of a golden tunnel, like the Golden Age, as if he's, returning and going to join the Avengers, right? And that's what we're getting in this issue, is him coming back from the Golden Age. And this is so interesting too, because there have been times where people have, and I don't want to spend too much of this time, bashing on Stan, but there have been times where he's taken credit for a glom of characters that Captain America gets included in.
Mm-hmm.
And he even writes here, it says at the bottom, the mighty Marvel Comics group is proud to announce that Jack Kirby drew the original Captain America during the Golden Age of comics, and now he draws it again. Also, Stan Lee's first script during those fabled days was Captain America, and now he authors it again. Now he doesn't say it was like
Yeah, there's an implication there.
a Captain America. He says it was Captain America, implying that the first script was his. Like, dude,
He doesn't quite say it, and
he
I
doesn't.
also think that like there's obviously it's self-serving, but it's
Yes.
also serving to the huckster shilling of the character and this issue. Like,
Yes.
I don't even know. It's 1963. I don't know. Like in the Stanley documentary, you see that clip of like some 70s, maybe 80s, no, still the 70s talk show, and Stan is on there with a fan, and I think it's Julie Schwartz is the DC editor. And the
Sure.
DC editor swears up and down that, like the average reader of a superhero comic is 6 or 7, which Stan Lee by the 70s disagrees with because he has all this, evidence that college kids are like eating up Marvel comics. But at the time, he probably would have assumed that the average age of a reader was 6 or 7. So, like, did they know who Captain America was? I don't know, but he has to really sell that this is important. Guys tied to the original version. I wish he would have said something clearer, but whatever.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, like you said, being like a bit of a salesperson. Like he is a promoter, but he's also management and related to ownership. And and he's making an effort to prevent Kirby from having a stake in these characters financially. He's keeping everyone at arm's length, not letting Jack get further ahead, not letting Jack have a larger role.
I
That
suppose,
just be
but okay, devil's advocate.
Please.
Capitalism turns people into crabs in a bucket, and they're all climbing over each other. And to a degree, everyone's got some kind of guilt in doing that. Because he thought that it was going to give him like creator credit on stuff going forward. Jack Kirby went ahead and said that Joe Simon wasn't the creator of Captain America.
Right.
There's all kinds of like people doing kind of a screwy thing to, get theirs because there's only so much going around. I don't know like how much in Stan's mind he was thinking, I'm screwing this guy. You know what I mean? Like, I just think, and then you look at guys like John Romita Sr. and Roy Thomas, who played ball, so to speak, and they didn't make waves about the guys they created and co-created. They talked Stan up in the comics media and the media at large, and to a degree John Romita, God rest his soul, is gone, but Roy Thomas is still out there talking up Stanley. It secured them, like they lived comfortable lives.
Right. They were on staff.
But Kirby could have been.
He couldn't have been.
You really think that?
I posit that he couldn't have been, and I think I might have said this last week. I think the among the many differences between Kirby and Romita Sr., one of them is the ability to Kirby's so much in his own head as a creating, like a force of creation. He's not. I don't think he had the demeanor for being part of an office team and day to day being in that environment.
That's very fair.
And Romita I think, had the temperament to work in a hierarchy and not really feel stifled by not getting to tell his own stories. Romita, I think, was an illustrator and an art director and teacher, and and a creative like editor type, but not a storyteller in the same way that he had a million things in his mind he needed to get out. But Kirby, I think, was the other kind.
That's absolutely true. But Stan also never got any real. He's not the creator as far as like copyright is concerned either. It's
It's true.
what put Stan
It's true.
what put Stan in his place, and like what secured his bag was that he was a really good self promoter and a really good promoter of Marvel Comics.
Yeah,
Um, and I value him for
me
that. I
too.
don't know. I'm mostly playing devil's advocate because like with people who are in the know, like there's such a like like it's so in vogue to like diminish what Stan Lee did, and sometimes I feel like it goes to the point of taking away from Stan undeservedly, even though I don't think he was the best guy back then. Um, and I do think that he did screw a lot of the people that he worked with, but I also do think he's the co-creator of these characters, and I also think that I can't say, hand to God, is it Stan or Jack who said we're bringing Captain America back,
For sure.
we're getting rid of the '50s stuff. He didn't make it out of World War II. He's in an iceberg or whatever, and now he's a man at a time. Like that to me is like the third heat that makes Captain America work. Like everything else, the Simon and Kirby stuff is now like an extended origin story, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason that we love Cap is he's a man at a time, and that starts here.
That's actually the thing I really wanted to talk about today. And so I'm really glad that you segued to that. I just want to give a quick hello to, or even a long hello, maybe a ridiculously long hello to Graydon James, to me, my regular old friends. I hope you're well, Graydon, and I hope to see you very soon.
Hello.
Wednesday Night Reviews Conrad says, I think you can appreciate the showmanship of what he did to promote himself and the books to sell them while acknowledging that it isn't always fair to the artists or writers. For sure. I think the only reason I really take a Jack Kirby point of view or Jack Kirby's side more often than not is because I relate more to the side of the person who draws. It's my bias, and because I hear people who are not big in the know always talking about Stanley. Like Stanley has a Marvel Legends figure, and like
Yes.
you know,
Okay. Now you're touching on something that bothers me. Yeah. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
the way that fandom embraces Stanley. I have a bigger issue with that than actually Stanley. Does
It's
that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And if I was like inundated with fans day to day, that's the because I'm just a contrarian. That's the
Sure.
tact I would take. But I mostly interact with other people who work in comics who know comics, so I get a lot more of the Stan didn't do anything kind
Oh
of stuff
God,
coming
no.
at me. I mean, I love cartoonist kayfabe, but they really hit that line hard that Stan didn't do anything.
Sure.
Blah blah blah.
I,
Um,
it's also they're reading comics. You'll hear Jim say, "You can't stand reading a Stanley comic now." Like the verbiage.
uh, See,
You know.
I love them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can only read like maybe like 3 a month
Sure.
because they're so chunky, really, and they get kind of samey with the huckster narrations. But I find his Fantastic Four and his Spider-Man
Me too.
delightful, even in a modern context. But yeah, I mean, it's all very complicated. I forget where I was even starting with this, but
Oh,
yeah,
it's
oh,
all
there's
good.
the Marvel Legends. Oh my god! But see,
Yeah.
that stands. Stan turned himself into a character. He gave
Yep.
himself a costume. Like that
Yep.
whole what we picture as Stan Lee is a costume he invented to sell himself to people, and it like super fucking worked. And other than being short and having like heavy eyebrows, like Jack doesn't. I wouldn't know if I like. I guess maybe I'd know a Jack Kirby action figure if I saw it, but I'd be like, oh, that kind of maybe looks like Jack Kirby. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's complicated. The whole thing's complicated.
I love it. I love it. So what we get right off the top is kind of something funny, and this plays into the modern lore of Captain America in the comics too. Is that he and Namor have a history, right? They're part of the invaders. They're part of this allied force fighting off the Axis in World War II. And in this comic, it's not there. he doesn't know who Captain America is, which I find really charming.
Huh.
So these pieces come along later, and that's part of the fun of it. Namor is a character that kind of fascinates me because as a kid, he was in the same episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends as Cap was. I loved the idea. I love like the kryptonite the characters have. I used to love when I was a kid, like when those things would turn on and off. Like the kryptonite goes back in the lead box. Oh, his power is back now. Now he can come back and fight. Oh, Submariner's dehydrated. He's powerless. Oh, some water. He's back in the game. But reading these comics as a kid, I never understood why everyone loved Namor or why they kept putting him in comics. He wasn't a hero. He was kind of a villain sometimes, but there was something noble about him. And, I wasn't into his costume, but now every time he's in a comic book, I think it looks great. Something about him I dig.
I think I have the same history with Namor of like, I probably only came around on him in the last, like in my adult life, essentially. I didn't get his design at all. I still think the wings on the ankles are silly. They wouldn't be if he wasn't an underwater guy. Like I just don't get it. Like he just stinks of like, we don't know what a superhero is yet. So we're just going to grab some elements and mush them up.
I think it's exactly what it is. And for whatever reason, they didn't get iterated out.
Yeah, the ankle wings is shocking. It's shocking. Even an underwater guy who flies, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, does that mean he's never swimming? He's just flying underwater?
Yeah, sure.
That's goofy. See, Aquaman's one of my favorite characters. I'm Team Aquaman, even if he's like a Namor knockoff to the nth.
Well,
he gets the goofball edges sand off.
It's really a fun, weird vestige of the Golden Age, for sure. And he's one of many Silver Age Marvel characters that is a reintroduction from the Golden Age, right?
Oh yeah, I think he was important in making the Marvel universe to the early readers seem like a real place. Like he gave it some history, and that this kind of craziness goes back further than this point, which is probably why he got used so much in those early days. But
right, and now that you say it like that, I mean, the way you phrased it, it makes me think of adding Marlon Brando as Jor-El. This idea that when you populate those old movies, that Superman movie with credible known actors, all of a sudden it feels like you're in a real movie, and this is like a real place, and they're real people. And like Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman in Batman Begins, it adds legitimacy. So having Submariner there and having a character called Human Torch, it makes the reader think that this is a real universe. These are real comics. They're not fly by night. They kind of always have been here.
I'll also say about Namor is, in the modern context, I love him for just being mostly naked. And he walks into a room mostly naked, and everybody's expected to take him seriously. Nobody's like, where's your shirt? Nobody gets uncomfortable. It's very funny to me.
Yeah. Do you have any legends of him, by the way? Marvel legends?
No, God. I was actually giving him as a birthday gift, because I have a ton of Aquaman stuff. And at some point, somebody gave me some earlier Marvel Legends, the one that's literally from like 2002 or 3 or something, where he's wearing the vest.
Right.
Yeah, but I did not hang on to that. I for a while I was using his trident with an Aquaman figure, but I think I got rid of even that.
Graydon says he's Poseidon Hermes. Yeah, he's got a bit of both, right? It's those mythic qualities. Adding those a bit of the iconography of Poseidon, I guess, just the themes of what he does, and then adding the visuals.
And also for the X-Men-ness, we should say that he's a mutant.
Yeah,
which is very tacked on, but
it's an afterthought.
I didn't even really buy it until they started putting him in the books, and I was like, okay, I guess fine, he's a mutant.
It's a big power shift, like in the mutant population, to have a king of Atlantis there, with the amount of power he can wield.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, X-Men. The Avengers are fighting Namor. None of that really matters. Just they need to get the idea that we're going to find this body. And Namor, as he is evading everyone else, he's up in the Arctic, and he comes across, oh my gosh, some problematic depictions
Oh
of the
Lord.
indigenous people in the North. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm interested also in, like, how does this change in the different iterations of his origin? So I was looking at a few different things today and in life, like looking at the 1979 or whatever year it was, like the TV special, which avoids all of this. The 1990 movie, which avoids most of this. And of course, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the animated series on Disney Plus, which comes close to this. And of course, the MCU, which does some of it, and Ultimates, which does a lot of it as well. And so sometimes they're able to still have this other group of people that are there, and mostly now they are either scientists, working in the Arctic in some capacity, who stumble across this body in the ice.
I like the idea that he's found by an Inuk person.
Sure.
I like that quite a bit. But yeah, this worshiping the mighty Lord of the Frozen Ice is
ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. And Namor gets to shit on them a little bit, calling them the fools, and but I like the idea that he also doesn't like anyone worshiping anyone but him, like just from a character thing from his point of view. And then he chucks the ice, and that sort of begins to lets the body flow south in the Gulf Stream, and then slowly start melting. And don't worry about the science.
Wow, that's convoluted.
Yeah. Well, it's Namor. I find that fun. Graydon says his
yeah,
eyebrows.
it is. But I just fully expected him to discover that it was Captain America in the moment, like not he floats downstream.
And this has been redrawn by many artists, like showing more detail that it is Captain America, but here you can't really tell. Graydon says his eyebrows are my reaction to those depictions. Yeah. And it happens really fast. Like we're now 5 pages in, and when we get him being called by name and he's out of the ice, but the Avengers happen to be going by in their submarine, because everyone knows the Avengers spent a little time in a submarine. And I love it, like seeing Iron Man at the helm turning this giant wheel. Like it's so fun.
So, you can tell that Kirby wasn't sure that he was selling that this was underwater, so he stuck in a couple like little half-drawn dolphins.
Yeah, it works. It works. I always do. I love when colorists do find ways to color people underwater, and it's so funny how it just reads so easily that they're underwater, but the bubbles do a lot too.
Yes.
I didn't mention the inker, by the way, because it's not credited in this issue, but historically it's George Roussos is the inker. It just says grandly illustrated by Jack Kirby. But in the edition I'm holding, the Marvel Visionaries Jack Kirby trade, it lists George Roussos as the inker.
See, that's Kirby for you, man. Taking all the credit from the inker.
Hold on.
Pretending that it's his inked line.
Kirby never even saw it. Come on. He never
I
knew.
know.
And also, anyway, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, they get this guy. They pull him in. I love the airlock science here, that there are bubbles going out. And Giant Man says, "I've got him."
It's the same science that went into the Titan submersible.
And who can he be? Why is he frozen solid? And Thor recognizes that there's something underneath these tattered clothes, and of course Wasp recognizes literally who he is. And this is such an iconic panel of him in the bed. And I love Iron Man's eyes. Do you love this version of Iron Man's costume, or is it just me?
I mean, I love it more than the gray original thing. This is a Ditko costume, and it's really a Ditko costume. Like in this iteration, his hallmarks are all over it. I do like it. I'm glad it didn't stick around, but I do like it.
I mean, it's essentially the same costume he still wears today and wears in the movies.
It is in terms of the color breakdown, which
Yeah.
but
And the
the
idea of those armored lines, they last for so
true,
long on the gloves and
absolutely,
obviously, you know,
absolutely.
but the pointed face mask, I love it because it just makes him look so different than the other characters in the on the team.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that it needs is like I don't want to be seeing his eyes, and maybe it was too early for that. Like maybe people would be like, is he a robot?
Right.
But like especially in the bottom left panel there, he
Oh yeah, that one
looks with
sucks.
Captain America's. He's holding Captain America's hood. He
Yeah.
looks like a cartoon man. Like he's very strange looking.
But I do love it when he yells, "The Wasp is right." I like that one. They look inset a little bit. And this is speaking of action figures, this is one of the ones that I have yet to track down. Um, it's on a retro card. It's like a Marvel Legends 20th anniversary figure, and
Of Iron
it's
Man,
yeah, it's that Iron Man. I mean, it's the same Iron Man they put out as the 80th,
but
and the
yeah, but
same Iron Man.
he has the helmet
Exactly,
horns.
he has that mask, and so I
The
want that mask.
a figure that I'm going to get if they ever do it is this Wasp, because I think this is one of the great unsung costumes of all time. I'm a super big fan of this Wasp costume.
Me too. I want these characters in these costumes together. Right. This to me
I mean
is
I couldn't I couldn't be fussed. Not an Avengers guy, but I do love
no.
that Wasp.
I'm a big fan of all this stuff. So I every time I come across this Iron Man, he's just wildly overpriced. So I'll get it one day. Conrad says reminds me of a classic Mega Man villain. That Iron Man mask. I do not know the Mega Man villain. Sorry, dude. And he's, I mean, within how many panels he goes from frozen solid? Why is he frozen solid at the top of the page? To the bottom of the page, all of you listen. He isn't dead. He's breathing. Like that's the change of how quickly he thaws. Right. So let's assume a lot of time has passed, and right away Cap is like up and ready for action. And I love the way that Kirby almost never draws him, except for the time when he's standing still. But he's always like a horizontal and in motion, which is
Oh yeah,
really cool.
this panel of him ambushing the Avengers is fantastic, and I only wish it were bigger. Really, I feel like in a few years, like Kirby would have made that the focus of the page. But
hey, have you come across the upcoming Tom Scioli Jack Kirby reimagining that's coming out of it's obviously not called Star Wars, but it's like Adam Star and the Star something stars, this star and that. So there's this Golden Age Jack Kirby comic that Tom Scioli has gotten hold of that is in public domain, and he's taken the panels, redrawn them, and recontextualized them for a more epic scope. So things that were drawn quite small, he might give them half a page. And Image is putting it out in the fall. But he's aiming to be as faithful to the spirit of the story with the page layouts as possible, and as faithful to the line art as he possibly can be. And he's done a preview of it on his YouTube channel called Total Recall Show, and it looks awesome.
Oh,
it looks really, really cool.
I've actually never read any Tom Scioli. I have that the Jack Kirby biography on my Amazon wish list that's been there for ages, but
right,
never got around to it.
I picked up Fantastic Four Grand Design, and in the regular comic book scale, it's really challenging to read because he's hitting like 25 panels per page.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And in the oversized, it's more enjoyable, but I'd rather read all 100 issues, truthfully, than cram it all into a few issues or one volume.
Yeah, that's how I felt about X-Men Grand Design for the most part. Although
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, and sometimes I enjoyed it quite a bit. But I don't enjoy it as much as I do going back and looking at the original runs.
Just to go back into Cap's history a tiny bit, 5 pages in 50 minutes. Wow.
Oh, jeez.
You have a lot to
Let's go.
talk
Let's
about.
go.
So his first words are Bucky, Bucky, look out. Now, just to go back, there is not in Captain America's print history an event preceding this moment. So like the character basically
Yeah.
fizzles out in terms of sales. There was not a narrative in publication that led up to this moment of Captain America being frozen in the ice. This is all a complete retcon and a reimagining. And I'm saying this for the audience, not for you, because I know you know this. And I find that really interesting as a way to reintroduce a character. Is, as you mentioned before, like kind of create this sort of third piece to it, right? We have his origin, we have the way he looks, and now it's like there's this whole other element, this tragic figure who's a man out of time, who's lost something, who's lost his brother in arms, his son figure. Really is a huge part, but it's like his first words. Really cool.
The other thing that I think is just, well, there's so much about this that to me is just genius. To the man at a time aspect, the question of like, will this character work in 1963? Like, I know 63 is early in the 60s. It's basically still the 50s, but things are shifting, and this character, if played the same way as he was in the 40s, might not hit, might not resonate. And this gives him like he's from a different time in a different world, and he's not going to fit in perfectly, but he's at his core a good man, and that's where all the awesome stories come from. The other thing that I think is so great about this is so much in superhero comics like becomes an anachronism. Like Batman's full of them. Like nobody has a butler anymore. Nobody's named Dick anymore. Like Robin comes from the circus. There aren't even really circuses anymore. But Captain America, the more that time goes on, the more interesting the fact that he's from the 40s becomes.
Right. That's a good point. I love the bottom center panel with everyone
Jesus,
in it.
it's so good. Yeah, love it.
And that looks like a Darwin Cook drawing of Captain America to me. Like
It
some of those
absolutely
line
does,
choices.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Graydon says, wait, Bucky's not all right? I have sad news for you, Grado. Something might have happened to Bucky. So he realizes who he is. He's kind of good, pulls himself back together and introduces himself to the team. And then they go into a weird adventure while in a submarine. Like this is a weird set of choices. Like we're gonna demonstrate your skill set as a combatant when we're in a pressurized submersible, which is probably in bad taste to talk about considering recent events. But boy, do they ever put their lives at risk being underwater and throwing Thor's hammer in a submarine. Bad idea. Anyway,
Well,
Captain America makes short.
I'm sure Iron Man isn't piloting the sub with a pong stick. So.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, Cap makes short work of everyone, and they're like, "Yeah, you're convinced you're the real McCoy, and why haven't you aged?" Says Wasp, and they're going to move into this. I feel we are all entitled to that explanation, Captain America. Thanks, Stan. So here we go. We're going to get the explanation. Are you ready for the explanation?
I'm ready for the explanation.
And again, one page. I gotta love it. And just the motion of these guys, like just great drawing. That big chunky front of that motorcycle, just it feels like it's really moving on you.
Oh yeah, and I mean I don't know, like I've never read anything beyond Cap's first appearance, like
Sure.
in the 40s, but so I don't know if like him on a motorcycle was already a thing, but this becomes such a thing, like Cap riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, especially like I think those John Byrne issues where he looks like he would be out of place without the motorcycle.
Oh yeah, completely.
Key part of it.
My first set of Marvel sample pages had Captain America, and I put him on a motorcycle, even though the script didn't call for
it. And of course, that 70s made for TV, those couple episodes of that show.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I love the
So let's see, who are they after here?
It must be Red Skull. No?
Well, you'd think, but of course it is not. I also want to throw that out there. Like the antagonist for Captain America, sure, Red Skull's a big part of it. Keeping in mind, Hydra does not exist yet. So in every other iteration, post, I guess, 2000, it's all about Hydra
Mm-hmm.
and or Red Skull. And Red Skull transitions from being Nazi to Hydra, bit by bit, culminating with in the animated Earth's Mightiest Heroes, it's completely Hydra and Red Skull that he's facing. There's no talk about Nazis. He's going for like a Hydra science base. And then, of course, in the movies, they mentioned at the beginning that Hydra is the science division of the Nazis. But
I
in the
remember Mark Waid's second Captain America run. I want to say issue somewhere between like 13 and 18. He did like an origin issue for Red Skull, which editorial scrubbed of like all Nazi references.
right,
And it ended up being printed like without his name on it because he was so incensed. But that was like the beginning of
yeah,
shift.
and I get it. I get it.
I do and I
There,
don't. I do and I don't. Sometimes I do worry that like this like the hypersensitivity to like even depicting Nazis in like a totally villainous
right.
role is like what got us here.
Oh, interesting.
To the like people like I don't know, like they weren't shown in like so directly like the 40s are so far away and they're just getting further and further. Yeah, I just worry that it had something to do with it. I don't know.
So you're blaming Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for not having enough Nazis
I've
for
never seen
Indy to
it.
fight?
I've never
Oh,
seen it.
he doesn't fight the Nazis in it.
Oh,
That's all I'm
he
trying to
doesn't
say.
in Last Crusade either though.
Yes, he does. He
I'm not
absolutely
Last
does.
Crusade. Sorry, Temple of Doom.
True, but I'm arguing that if you do at least once a decade, you're okay.
Yeah, well, I think he's fighting Nazis in the new one. Not that I'll ever see it, but
You will never see it.
I'm not an Indiana Jones guy. I didn't grow up with the movies. I was like not born for the first one, and then
Right.
I wasn't a theater going age for the other two. They never
Fair
played
enough.
on TV like ever. So I first saw Raiders in 2019. First
Oh
time.
my goodness. Yeah, that's very alien for me. It's a formative piece for me, and I feel Cap and Indy are aligned a lot in many ways. I feel like if he was ever going to go on an adventure, like Hellboy, Cap, and Indiana Jones, like that, in 1944, to me that sounds just like a great, fun romp. But to each their own, of course. Graydon adds, not to go back any pages, but is there something to the fact that Namor is Roman backwards?
There might
Yes.
be, but I wouldn't
Yes.
know.
You have to go back, I think, and ask Bill Everett about that back in the day. So yeah, we get the quick flashback. I'm just looking through to read this part, and Cap says, "It seems like only yesterday, but it was more than 20 years ago that my teenage pal." By the way, don't call people your teenage pal. It's not a good way to start. My teenage pal Bucky and I, while acting as security guards at an ETO army base, tried to stop an explosive-filled drone plane from taking to the air. And they do not say who that is there, but there is a person who is in shadow under that drone plane who says, "Ha! Thus do I triumph over Captain America and his teenage pal Bucky. If they reach the plane, they die, and if they fail, America loses one of its newest weapons." And of course, it just continues on that, they jump aboard, and Bucky keeps going. Captain America falls off, and that's the end of that. Bucky's exploded. It's later retconned that this is like at a Zemo base.
Okay.
In the English Channel. And I love the fact that just, between panels 3 and 4, that gap, the gutter, is where Ed Brubaker is like, yeah, I got something here. We don't see the body. We don't know. I can make something out of that. Winter Soldier comes from just the gap between those two panels, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm assuming you enjoyed Winter Soldier as a concept and the movies and whatnot.
Oh yeah, movie and new comic. It's one like I haven't read like a ton of Captain America runs, but Brubaker's is one of the ones that I have read and loved.
That was the first one that got me reading it monthly.
It was Mark Waid's second '90s run after the Onslaught stuff when Captain America came back. That was where I first started really reading him. As a little kid, I was picking up random issues.
I definitely did not. I didn't start reading it until I think it was 2005. I started buying back issues of the Winter Soldier. That I think it might have been a number one. Even was it kind of the Red Menace and all that stuff, and then they killed him by issue 25 at the end of Civil War. I think if I have that correct. Trevor 16 Shooter, how are you, sir? He says the new indie is fun. I've heard mixed things, and I would love to go see it in theater. I don't know if I'm going to get the time. Same as The Flash. I really wanted to see that one in the theater, but I might have missed it. And that one should be on HBO Max, whatever, by mid-month. Yeah. So if you missed it, it'll be online soon.
I have not seen it.
So Cap goes underwater, goes to the bottom, and he's conscious, and then eventually he freezes, and that's the end of that. And Giant Man says, "We believe you, Captain America." And they've reached their destination. They're in New York, and they come out, and then something crazy happens. And they all turn to stone in a rather Gorgon-esque, Medusa-esque moment. The Avengers have turned to stone. Wild. And here the issue kind of goes off the rails. It gets pretty bonkers. Cap comes out, doesn't know what's happened. Everyone sees all these statues, sees these ladies with Sue Storm's amazing bouffant. Sally, look. And Cap sees the United Nations. That's pretty cool. They call him Mac. He, for some reason, gets to go to a hotel. Like the people just let him in, and he takes off his stuff and has a little nap in the hotel without his boots on. He's had no food. He has no money, no ID. But he's in this nice hotel with a good-looking TV. And then I don't really understand how this happens. But a kid walks into his room. And he believes it's Bucky. And, of course, it is Rick Jones, who is a spitting image of Bucky. And Rick Jones might be the most interesting person in Marvel. If you were to reframe everything, he's almost like the Watcher, and that like he kind of gets to witness everything and be part of the whole adventure. And he's almost like a Luke Skywalker kid who sort of meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, meets Han Solo, meets Darth Vader, like sees the whole world go in front of him.
I would call him the most interesting, least interesting character in Marvel.
I think that's perfect. So how does it happen that in his hotel room where no one knows where he is, Rick Jones finds him, and bizarre. So anyway, just go past that. And he finds out about the Hulk. Cool, Sergeant Fury telling commandos. The Fangs of the Fox. Nice. Well, hold on. Were those guns? Oh, it was a power
timing light. This is kind of interesting. Are you proud of your paycheck? It seems to indicate they had data that it wasn't 7-year-olds reading the comics.
Right.
That's odd.
Well, we know that soldiers were reading comics, of course, in World War II, famously.
Yeah, but at this point, like post Comics Code, I think the prevailing attitude was that it was children.
Well, the advertiser is willing to risk money that it isn't. I think Julie Schwartz and a lot of those DC guys were really conservative thinking.
Yeah, almost definitely, that's true.
That's their brand over at DC or National. Look, fella, after we find the Avengers, I'm sure they can recommend a real nice head shrinker for you.
So he was just checking random hotel rooms.
Yeah. So they're getting ready. They decide to go and they look at the photograph evidence of what was going on in the street when the Avengers turned to stone. And Cap gets enough information there that he has no press photos Photog's camera. Photog being slang for photographer. No press Photog's camera ever looked like that. Not even 20 years later. And Rick says, it looks like some kind of gun. So
Really,
they
it
realize,
should be Rick noticing that. How would Cap
yeah,
know that's not what a camera looks like?
exactly. I really do like the more modern versions of Cap not being used to things in
Oh yeah,
1960s.
I mean, like I'm giving Stan a ton of credit for the man at a time thing, but so far it's come up in he notices women have different hairdos.
Yeah, it's not much, but like I loved the version in. I mean, did you read Ultimates when it came out?
I did. I'm not sure how I feel about it now, but at the
Right, right,
time,
right,
the first 6 issues I thought were like that was the first time I ever liked the Avengers as a
right.
concept.
And we can't deny how formative those early issues are on the Avengers movies, and
Some
the
parts
idea.
I think burned in my brain. Like I remember like how like viscerally like scary I thought it was, and I was a teenager when it's like Hulk is fighting Iron Man, and Iron Man at that point is like this is also the first time I liked Iron Man. Um,
Right.
he's not a fly around like he's not like Superman in a suit of armor. He's almost like a human bullet. Like they put him in a thing, they fire him off. Like he has to have a whole flight crew, a pit crew, and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
he gets like grabbed by the Hulk, and the Hulk is like peeling the armor off him, and you just know that like inside he's like tuna fish basically. Like he's like so soft, and his protection is getting taken from him. Man, that's like it still sticks with me.
Yeah, and when Hulk gets his hands on Giant Man and starts pulling out teeth,
Oh God, I forgot
right?
about that. Oh yeah, oh yeah,
It
Lordy,
was
Lordy.
so for anyone who watching this who's not in the know. In the early 2000s, Marvel decided to update, like in a like an imprint of their universe, have another universe that where they could start whatever characters they wanted again, and without the baggage of continuity, and they could reimagine the characters for the day in which we lived. And so the Avengers book was called The Ultimates because
Which
the imprint was
was,
called Ultimate Marvel.
but it also speaks to like the stink that was on the Avengers, because like
Yes,
it was Ultimate Spider-Man, it was Ultimate X-Men, it was even Ultimate Fantastic Four, but they knew that Ultimate Avengers wasn't going to get people excited.
right. And the series, reimagines each of the core characters, Captain America being kind of the impetus for the team almost.
Mm-hmm.
And the version of him that they depict is super close to what they eventually brought into the movies, except for Ultimate's Captain America is much nastier.
Oh yeah, he's a jerk.
But the way he looked was more on par, and just the charade of having him wake up in another place and being like, "Hey, buddy, you're okay. It's still 1945. You're all right," and him having a sense something's wrong. And Colonel Fury goes in to talk to him, and he's like, whatever line he says, like, "Sorry, Hans." I'm basically saying, I know you're a Nazi because the highest ranking African American member of the American military is like only at this rank. There's no way he would ever be a colonel. Like kind of throwing shade at the racism of the states in the 1940s, while also showing that the character kind of really, he's a lot harder to fool than you'd think. And the way he throws shield agents like out the door, and they don't have enough bodies to restrain him, and eventually he just bursts out the window and goes for a run. That was very reminiscent of the movie.
The part that doesn't make it into the movie
Right.
sticks out into my mind is at the end of it might even be the first issue, I don't know, but like George Bush Jr. W. Bush meets him because he's the sitting president, and he goes, "So what's the verdict, Captain Rogers? The 21st century, cool or uncool?" And you turn to the last page, big splash, Captain America standing there, I think saluting for some fucking reason, and
It's the president.
he says, "Cool, Mr. President, definitely cool."
But Brian Hitch's art is just,
Oh man, it's like
Yeah.
Like in a lot of ways, like he ruined comics for the rest of us because like from then on in, like it wasn't enough to draw a spaceship. You had to draw a spaceship with the whole armada coming out of the front of it, and like
Yeah.
all the little bits of space debris. Like he really like upped everybody else's game.
It makes me think, just to put the two guys, Kirby and Hitch, in the same conversation for a minute, because Kirby's art is so much more dynamic than a lot of other people that were his contemporaries. The way that his stuff did not look like anyone else's, and maybe to someone else it felt very cinematic compared to the house style at DC. Maybe this was like a really cinematic way to do cartooning, but we would use the same word to describe Hitch by compared to his peers. That it was the beginning of widescreen
Yeah,
comics.
well, that's what they used to call it back then.
And
Widescreen.
right, and I remember, of course, reading Ultimates and being like, "Oh, this clearly is a movie. Like we can see this movie." And for me, it was the first time ever reading a comic book where there was no effort to imagine movie from that comic. Like you
Yeah.
didn't have to do any creative leap. It was just right there in front of you. You could see it all being played out. It
But
looked
at
like
the
it was
same
ready
time,
to go.
it's like full of those Mark Miller
Oh yeah,
hallmarks, the whole corny and stuff.
it's very dated, but it was bleeding edge at the time.
Oh Lord,
It was so
it's.
cool.
I mean, I knew people who never read a comic who were like going on and on and on about how fantastic that book was. It's a game changer for sure. And I mean, we almost certainly owe the MCU to it.
Yes, I would agree with you. So I almost called him Bucky again, but Rick Jones has a network of kids that Teen Brigade. Graydon calls it the teen. He says the Teen Brigade is greater than the internet in the comments. So Rick Jones goes after, tells his Teen Brigade, we're looking for this guy, and of course within an hour they know exactly where that guy is. They found him in New York City, which is pretty remarkable. I see Jason Lowe is here. Avenger buds,
Jason.
assemble. How are you, Jason? Hope you're well. And Cap finds him up in the room in some building, and he's looking at comparing the photograph to in his hand to who he sees through the window, and he bursts through that window in a panel I bet you Kirby would like to redraw.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the ink. Let's just assume that they didn't have a lot of time, but it looks like it could be translated better, rendered a little better. It looks kind of half done. Anyway, and Cap is just horizontal on every panel. And here you just see Kirby making use of the depth. That first panel going from like back to front and guiding your eye down and to the right. And that center panel.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but
it is.
It's fantastic. I don't know.
But if you're trying to show that like Captain America is sort of like a human wrecking ball, that there's no he says here, "Ow, there's no stopping him. He's like a whirlwind."
Yeah, the line and the position makes me imagine that he's actually spinning like the shield, like a frisbee. Like,
oh yeah, oh that'd be great if he had made that choice to have either a couple speed lines or blur and omit a couple pieces so that it wasn't he was spinning like a top. This also looks like it's kind of they're about to enjoy some man time together. Like
you talk about being horizontal on every page.
Yeah. No one could pay us enough to fight him. Knock it off, Masked Man. We give up. It's fun. And finally, he gets to the last guy and pulls off his. Oh, he gets the last guy and reaches up, and then pulls off his face.
What? I do not remember this at all. He's a broccoli man.
I've been looking for the name of this species in this issue. They just call him an alien. But I feel like they show this guy in like Guardians, one of the Guardians movies. He's there.
Is he like from the alien race that the Phoenix wipes out?
Right, right. I'm not sure. I'm sure I could look it up in my official Marvel handbook, but I'm not going to.
I mean, I'm laughing, but I actually think that it's fantastic. I love this design.
Yeah,
It's insane.
I was right. You're not
Like,
a human.
you weren't going to see this in a DC book. If he got a mask and he was an alien, he'd have pointy ears. End of story.
Right. Like those Green Lantern villains
Yeah.
of the Silver Age Green Lantern. Yeah. Holy cow! Look what we've been working for. Let me out of here. I love it. All these guys are terrified that they're working for an alien and they're gone.
I've had it. Me for the straight and narrow from now on.
So the alien, pretty much right away decides like there's not going to be a physical confrontation anymore. We're done fighting. I'm going to not tell you my whole story. Like, no, we don't have to punch. We're good. I cannot bear physical contact with primitive beings. Cap's not offended. He's like, okay, sure, man, no problem. So the alien tells he's been here for centuries. His craft is buried at the bottom of the ocean.
To pronounce my name correctly, I would have to pull out your tongue.
And that he is probably the inspiration in Greek mythology for Medusa because his hair looks like snakes.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
That's like a weird, like, stand through that in because, I mean, his hair does not look like snakes.
Well, but Jack does draw that he's, turning guys to stone in the previous panel.
Oh, okay, maybe so. Yeah, all right.
There is the implication that like some of these old statues.
I like completely forgot that the Avengers were stone.
Right. Oh, pardon me. I'm going too fast because the pagination, the one I'm holding in my hand, is different than this. So he's dragging the alien along, wants to solve this problem, turns everyone back from stone. And that was easy. Okay, problem solved. But they got to get the guy's ship back. So they have to deal with Namor again. And some nice underwater stuff. And then we get a whole other schmoz, another battle with Namor coming. But the Avengers go back to that spot. And Thor does some nice magnetic... I like when they kind of play with magnetism as being this really big science piece, right? Yeah, Trevor...
They were impressed with magnets in the 60s.
Trevor, 16shooter says, yeah, I think he's a Dabari.
Does that mean something?
Yeah, broccoli people. But they get referenced. It's like a known alien race. If you ever do like your collection of species. Cap gets on some cool scuba gear. They go underneath. Giant Man and him are getting it ready. Sorry, is it Giant Man down? Yeah, it is. And Thor uses his hammer to pull up the ship. You get your weird Iron Man face again. Oh, good dad joke there, Graydon. Graydon says, actually, an anti-drug story. The dangers of getting stoned. It worked. You freed the ship, Thor. Why do you sound surprised? Was that not my intention? And they get the ship back up. And just before they're about to fix everything, the Atlanteans show up and ruin the party with their awesome dome helmets. And they have a big fight. Namor versus everybody.
In the the Avengers still don't it doesn't click for me back then. Like Stan and Jack in the Fantastic Four, like the characters were so like you knew what responses were true and what characters would do in a fight and stuff. This like Thor is the one who thinks to magnetize his hammer.
Yeah,
it's so strange. Like it should be like Iron Man's idea to use Thor's hammer in this. And I think in Fantastic Four it would have been like the Mr. Fantastic coming up with the idea, but
for sure,
it's like Stan doesn't know these characters
right
the way that he knows the Fantastic Four.
And you could argue that there are only 4 issues into the team book, and maybe it was just a question of oh, Iron Man had this many lines already, and maybe we need to make sure Thor does something this issue.
No, true, and
Like checking the boxes.
yeah.
Trevor says Phoenix killed them, the Dabari. So you were right when you said about the Phoenix aliens.
It's a broccoli man.
Yeah, the broccoli people. John Byrne wanted to draw that person in there, getting the whole species getting eliminated. I really dig seeing these two guys fight because both people can fly and both people can punch. So you can get both feet off the ground on every panel and both fists moving in every panel. So we get some cool, weird. I don't even know what you want to call this. I mean, if you weren't using Iron Man's jargon, how would you even describe what's happening here? He's spinning Namor around. The force of his transistor-powered magnetic repulsor. And Namor's like, all right, your weapon sucks. Here we go. I'm stronger than ever now. And smashy, smashy. But how good is that punch in panel 4?
Oh, it's fantastic.
I love
legs akimbo.
Yeah. These two guys are just made for an all-out brawl, and because they're different colors and it's so simple to look at, they look like they'd be an absolute blast to draw a brawl between these two. I'll smash your built-in hand weapons.
We'll get around to naming those later.
I love Kirby's hands. Just big chunky things. Wasp is blinding him.
It's just getting in his eyes. I kind of love it.
Yeah, just being a little pest. I did not know that you said before that Ditko is credited with that iteration.
Oh yeah, this is a. I don't think he picked the colors. I think
sure,
whoever was doing that across the board did that. But he came up with this design when
in like a Tales of Suspense issue.
Yeah, they just felt like the thing wasn't working.
Yeah, the giant golden painted piece of junk for sure. Oh, this is much better. Obviously, I mean it's what lasted. And wide swing, man. Thor is hitting a home run with that thing. It's a huge swing, and again, it's just a big fight, right? They zap him. He uses his hammer to absorb and send it back along the ground. And now we get a momentary brawl between Thor and Namor, which in my head wouldn't be a long fight, but
Oh, who are you putting your money on?
Thor.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Thor is Thor. So there's
okay.
They got to draw it out. Giant Man gets his moment.
I put Thor and Iron Man like in the same league. I don't know.
No, this version of Iron Man is not powerful enough.
Oh, I guess it's pretty early. Yeah, fair enough.
But Thor is young and strong. Nice punch. Giant Man is so useless sometimes, though. Like for a guy that is as big as he could be, I feel like he would break.
He's there to like confuse the perspective.
Yes.
Like in the very first, like the big splash in the beginning, my initial reaction is like, there's a normal sized man and 4 halflings.
So here you are, laughing boy. Yeah, Namor wants Thor's hammer. You can't pick it up, of course. And it kind of they fight for no reason. Just I think to have an action sequence, but it doesn't really add anything to the story. Let's just get that alien out of here. Get a chance for everyone to display their powers. And then the ship takes off, and they vow to be a team.
Whoop-de shit.
Yeah, it's a weird issue. And Rick Jones posits, he's like, oh, Cap is the greatest. I love being in his hotel room with him alone. Cap is the greatest guy I've ever met. But what about the Hulk? Like, you think he's mad now? Wait until he finds out that I've got a new guy in my life. Like, it's gonna be really, really, really bad.
That's why Rick Jones he goes through hotels checking for unlocked doors.
Yeah, that's really
That's what you had to do to cruise back then.
Mike Marvel, boys, men, scandalous stuff.
He's no Charles Atlas.
True. My gosh.
Yeah, I mean, not either of their best work. Well, Kirby's work is up to snuff with the other stuff he was doing early
Yes,
in Marvel, but it is not. Whoever plotted it wasn't on their best game.
agreed. There. Well, let's. I think we can probably safely say that Kirby plotted that issue.
I wouldn't
I
want
don't
to
think
pin
Avengers
it
was.
on him.
I don't think Avengers was a great series.
No, it has the feeling of like you pick up Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, and you can tell that everybody involved wanted to be making those comics. And Avengers really feels like they were told, Fantastic Four is doing so well, we need another team book. Put
Right.
together a team book, and so they took together a bunch of their like guys who were like middling in sales, and
Yes.
but I mean this was rough, and it's funny because there's a lot of stuff that would have worked. Like one of my favorite comics of the '90s is Grant Morrison's JLA. And there's an issue early on where the new Green Arrow joins the team. And on his first mission, like he goes up to the moon where their base is. Have you read this one? And he finds that they've all already been captured. So it's him against the guy that took down 6 of 7 of the biggest, most powerful super beings. And there's like that's almost happens here, where like the Avengers get taken out. But Cap doesn't do much to actually solve the problem. He sort of like lucks into it. I don't know. And then it goes on from there. It just like a million things are happening, but nothing is happening.
Right. But the story you're saying would have been better if they had gone for the same approach as that episode or issue of. It's either issue like 7 or 8.
I could probably
it's
like
in there.
okay. There's 4 issues for the Martian storyline. There's the Tomorrow Woman story, which is 1 issue. There's 2 issues for the Heaven and Hell battle. So that's 6, 7. So it's 8 and 9 are the key story.
Connor Hawk is his name.
Connor Hawk. And I could go on about that. Don't even get me started. Every line of dialogue in that thing sings. And it has like one of my favorite like in between issue cliffhangers. It's unbelievable. It's only 2 issues.
I'm going to go back and read that after. I'll read that next. I have the trades. I was reading it. I don't remember. I don't remember which way I collected that, but I know I have the trades at this moment in time. And those 2 issues were not drawn by Howard Porter.
No, they are Oscar Jimenez, I want to say, whose work I don't know.
But Howard Porter's body language and faces were so janky.
It's very stiff. He became an architect for a while, which makes like a lot of sense. He's back in comics now, but he disappeared for a good while. But I like him. I don't love him, but the Oscar guy who does those Green Arrow issues is phenomenal. He's so good. He's so good.
Much better flow. Just a quick note about this classic issue I got. I'm just going to zoom in for a minute, if you don't mind, because there's something special about it, other than the fact that it's a reprinting of Avengers number 4. You ready for a little solo view? I'm sorry to do this to you, Internet. But there is a backup story. Like with those X-Men, with classic X-Men, with those Chris Claremont and John Bolton backup stories, this one has a Dwayne McDuffie and Oming.
I was going to guess that it was Oming.
And which is really cool to see. And it's Cap and just beautiful, like, watercolor stuff. Really nice palette. Gabe Jones, one of the characters in the Howling Commandos, like right there, you can see the team.
Mm-hmm.
Really Mignola-esque. Awesome. So this is like another adventure from that time period, and then without spoiling the rest of it, there is like a cover, a pinup at the end.
A very unusual shield for Captain America there. It's off.
Yeah, I think it was good. But anyway, it's kind of neat.
Looks great. It's hard to believe that the Avengers run the world now from such shabby beginnings.
We can't forget that when it came to selling their properties, no biter, right? Fantastic Four gets bought by Fox. X-Men gets bought by Fox. Spider-Man gets bought by, eventually it ends up with Sony. Hulk goes to Universal. Punisher, Daredevil,
Yep.
Elektra, Ghost Rider. No one wants the Avengers. No one wants to do Captain America or Iron Man or Thor, right? They seem like these are things that there's too much of a leap to an audience will buy into that. And you know what? It might have had, like, if they had done it 5 years earlier, it probably wouldn't have worked.
It's hard to say because, like, well, no, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have because Iron Man came out at the exact right point. The humidity is warping this poster that's in front of me. Anyway, Iron Man came at the exact right point, special effects wise, visual effects wise, because they'd gotten like metallic objects to look so good. Because I can remember like watching the trailer for the first time and just not even be able to believe what I was seeing. Like I was just like, it doesn't look that good anymore when you go back. But at the time, it looked like a real Iron Man flying next to Harrier jets or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, obviously Robert Downey Jr.'s performance was revelatory. That would have worked at any point, but the effects were like so there for the first Iron Man that I don't know if they could have sold that movie earlier. But.
I think there's a lot of things in the magic sauce that made that all come together, and I'm really grateful that it did because something more to love, something to enjoy that actually then enlightens or puts a shine on older comics and older things that are kind of gone. Like I'd rather love the Avengers than not love the Avengers. And so if my way in happens to be a movie in 2011 or whatever year it was, whatever it is, like okay, so I'm in. Now I want to go read the first 50 issues, or I want to go read the George Perez issues or whatever it might be. So I'm just grateful that it worked eventually.
It still lacks something for me. Like it's funny to me that like Stan and Jack too, clearly they didn't really get what was working about their early comics because it's not present in that Avengers issue.
Right.
There's none of that like the Fantastic Four arguing and palling around Reed's lab or whatever while they're da-da-da-da-da. Like it's just constant superhero nonsense, and there's no sense of any of these characters as characters, any of these characters as real people.
Yeah.
And in my memory, I mean, it's been, like I said, like 15 to 20 years since I read the first Avengers Essential volume, which is all I've ever read of the early Avengers. But that was my feeling the whole way through. That just like it didn't feel like the good parts of a Marvel comic. It had the excesses that DC didn't have, but it didn't have the heart to any degree. To me,
well, I think that's for sure. I think that's a very fair assessment of it. If you were asking sort of the general audiences, like what seems to be what made the Marvel brand so special as a change from other comics of the day, it is like that the characters are all flawed.
Mm-hmm.
They all have, but if you look at in that issue, like okay, Thor is flawless, right? Iron Man had no flaws to present in that issue. Giant Man had no flaws to present. Wasp was barely in it, and Cap has no flaw other than the fact that he doesn't know his way around.
But you also can't even assign virtues to them. Like
right.
they're good guys because they're good guys.
Right.
But they're all just 100% interchangeable in terms of personality, except for the Wasp, who has Stan Lee's flighty lady personality that he gave all the women early on. But
yeah. So I'm not surprised that it doesn't sing out as like a storytelling touchstone. But I just love that the part of it that mattered was like the return of Cap. That's
coming out of the ice, brilliant. Lots of great drawing from Kirby.
Sure, and the coming out of the ice has happened in every iteration since then, except for the '70s motorcycle one. And that one, he inherits the mantle from his
not
dad.
Steve Rogers. Okay.
No, his dad is Steve Rogers.
No, I've never seen it. I've seen several times the '90s Cap. He steals cars. It's very funny. It's like his main superpower is stealing cars.
It's so ridiculous and so poorly made, but it had, like he's on the rocket from Europe,
and you see the little boy, and he recognizes him as the prince. Oh man, I want to watch that movie again.
Yeah, and Cap kicks like a tail fin to redirect it from the White House, and he redirects it, and then it crashes in Alaska.
They had a lot of gas left, man. Got a full tank.
It crashed in Alaska, and he freezes, and then they find him, a Canadian and a German, West German and Canadian scientist. They find him in the ice, and yeah, it goes from there. But it was just, and then
The highlight is that he keeps faking sick on car rides to get the person to pull over, and then he steals the vehicle. It happens like 2-3 times. It's crazy. It's like, you think that's what the comic was about? This guy who just gets nauseous super easily but takes advantage.
Yeah, he's car sick. It's really silly, and I love that they were able to make a good version of that for Ultimates. Him getting on the rocket again, as they're storming a base in Europe in World War II, and then again in the movies, right? Like it really works with the flying wing. I debated for a long time, like how do you end the movie where you need to end the movie? When does he need to lose Bucky? Like you need it at the start. Like I get it, you need to be at the start of the third act, like character beat is lowest, so losing Bucky then, but like it takes Bucky away from the climax.
The big heroic moment. Yeah, you can go either way. Like you're damned if you do, and
yeah, it was a choice, and in the end, we get to the same destination, which is Endgame. Right, you get everything worked out. Like all the things happened, and we got Winter Soldier anyway, so it totally worked out. But it just shows you like when the foundation of the character is really strong, you can mess around with chronology and continuity, and it will still come out true by the end. It really doesn't matter. So it was really cool. Yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan. You don't have this guy.
Well, you don't have.
I do.
The dog-faced boy.
I do. Dog-faced boy. When I got the one that this is a copy of, like this is a repaint of the 80th anniversary, like the darker blue. This is a new head sculpt and all that stuff. But when I got that 80th anniversary, I didn't need the dog-faced one anymore. And I had a friend who was. I know.
The dog head.
But there are other things about it I don't like. This one has actual like textured mail as opposed to paint.
He didn't have that in the 90s. See, they brought that back with what's his name, John Cassidy's run.
Yeah. So I like this one a ton, and this shield, unfortunately, has.
But it's still like it looks so cool with the effects in.
Yeah, when you put the effects in, but I do have other shields I can add on. I probably have. I mean, I counted it for somebody before. I had, like Wolverine, Captain America, the Iron Man. I think I probably have like maybe 20 of each. Marvel Legends, maybe, because there's so many versions of Cap from the movies.
You're saying you have 20 Captain Americas?
Probably.
Why?
Yeah, I might.
All you need is dog-faced boy. That's just the beginning.
The thing
that I love about him is like so many superheroes have the feral version. Like Spider-Man has Man Spider, and Batman has Gotham by Gaslight vampire version. Wolverine goes but with Captain America, it's just like why wolf? Like why was that the story? It has nothing to do with Captain America, but he became a werewolf.
Right. I have to correct you. It's not Gotham by Gaslight. It's Red Rain.
Oh,
maybe?
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Okay. I would feel
Gotham
really
by Gaslight is the Mike Mignola.
Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, I can't remember what is the original Batman vampire elsewhere?
Is it not called Red Rain?
Doesn't ring familiar.
You're making me do this.
I'll do it faster. Batman Elseworlds.
But the question is, can you get it onto the stream?
No, I can't. I also can't find it.
Yeah, by Doug Mensch, Kelly Jones, Malcolm Jones III.
Red Rain.
Yeah.
Just like I said.
Yes. Yeah. So I still want them to make a Captain America from.
Okay. See, here's the thing.
Yes.
The version that I had, which maybe it came later. Yeah, it says book 3. It's called Crimson Mist. That's the title that I had in my head. Crimson Mist.
Right. Well, they have to keep playing on the red
Yeah.
and some sort of weather condition.
Yep.
Yeah. So eventually you get to like the, maroon tsunami. Like it gets after a while. I want them to make the Avengers Captain America one again because it's all out of whack and out of scale and not a good figure, as well as like the first Avenger Captain America. They remake both those figures with updated parts, and so I'll get 2 more, and then I need a new Kid Bucky.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If I had more room, I might expand into
Yes,
other. But
yes. Hey, did you ever watch Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes?
oh, I love that show. Yeah.
Okay,
That's like definitive Avengers, the best version to me.
it could be, and I love that on the Howling Commandos, you get really fun, like quick, cartoony versions of each of those team members, including, of course, James Howlett. You get Wolverine as one of the Howling Commandos, which is kind of a fun retcon. It reminds me of like Captain Rex being part of the Endor raid with the Ewoks. You know what I mean?
Speaking of howling,
Nice. So let's call it a night because you just want to with your Howling Captain America. Where can people follow you on social media?
I'm David J. Cutler everywhere. Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, as long as the legs on that are still standing.
And
Blue
where did you
Sky.
right, Blue Sky. What is Blue Sky?
I don't know. Like people just they keep finding this new thing, but like to me, like you need the assholes on these platforms to a degree because it drives engagement. And if you're just talking in an echo chamber, even if like, I mean, the voices they're trying to like block out are awful, and they should be censored to a degree for sure when it comes to the worst things they say. But it needs to be a platform where they want to be, because it's not going to take off otherwise. Because like so much content is driven from look what this idiot said, and if you're not in a place where idiots are saying stuff, it's not going to happen. So I have no faith in Blue Sky whatsoever. I mean, Hive was a joke. I didn't join Mastodon, but
Well, speaking of idiots saying stuff, you can please click like and subscribe to the channel.
yeah,
You
do
can
that.
find
We're here
you can
every week
find
talking
yeah,
politics,
you
talking
can find
cat.
Chris and I on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook at Group of 7 Comics. And of course, the number 7 is the number, not the word. And you can get our comics at group7comics.ca. And there's a good bundle of some. This one's out of print. So you can't get that one anymore. But the other ones you can get. And you'll find it.
I got to get my trade from you.
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
Some files are going to the printer this week. It's very
Fan
exciting
Expo,
stuff.
I'll pick it up, I guess.
Yeah, please do. Or we'll drop it off, depending on what happens first. And yeah, new trade for Group of 7 Most Secret Tale. This one is out of print, and this is one of my copies at home. But yeah, the new version of that, the expanded edition, is coming out. It'll be at Fan Expo. It'll be at the Dragon is having their anniversary event in September. We're doing Whitcalf in November or October, as well as something at we're doing an in-store mini con at A Hero's Tale in Kitchener. So there'll be lots of in-person events in the next few months as well, which is tons of fun, David.
Mm-hmm.
You got Fan Expo? Anything else coming up?
No, I hate doing conventions and I hate traveling.
Perfect.
Gets my anxiety up, but I am doing Fan Expo. If people would fly me places, I would do them. I'm not doing them my own dime. I should. It'd be better for the career. Whatever. I'm not. But since we were talking about Captain America, I just pulled this off the shelf. United States of Captain America. It has like my second work for Marvel in it ever. It's by Chris Cantwell and drawn primarily by Dale Eaglesham, with a bunch of backups for different Captain Americas from across America. And my edition was the Captain America of the Kickapoo Nation, Joe Gomez, and you can see him. Here's the first time I ever
full screen you. Hold on.
Captain America. He won't go in focus. Whatever. You can see him. Man, I was cartoony back then. I still am, but Lord, that's cartoony. And there's Joe. Still
Right.
so proud of that costume. God, he looks great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I wish he'd come back, but he was a lightning rod for controversy. So we'll see.
I want to hear more about that.
We're done here, sir.
No, it's okay. I want to hear more about the
The
controversy.
show's over. We said our goodbyes.
Okay, all right.
No. I mean, I've talked about it in public before, but it was like, I mean, Dean Cain was on Fox News, like shitting all over us. Of course, the book hadn't come out yet, but
Just the idea that why can't people leave comics alone, kind of thing.
no, like that it was that these the diverse nation of Captain Americas was anti-white, anti-heroism for some reason. We got lots of death threats on Twitter, but also, I mean, there's a very like an understandable group among First Nations people who, I mean, to them, like when they look at the American flag, like they may as well be seeing the swastika, like it's a symbol of their oppression or whatever, which I knew would be an issue going into it, but at the same time, like I always feel like I don't need every character I co-create or create or work on to match my politics perfectly. Like I would never put on a maple leaf costume. I would never put on an American whatever costume and like, you know, hang my rep on these imperfect, often horrible imperialist nations. But at the same time, I love stuff about these countries. I love stuff about the culture, and I love like the vast majority, let's say 70% of the people that make them up. And to me, like I want to be included. So I know I don't look it, but I am a Mi'kmaq, and I want to be a part of the world we live in. I want to be a part of this country and included. I love the idea that, you know, there's like this you know, the tiki torches guys are out and Captain America shows up, and Captain America is from the Kickapoo Nation, man. He's First Nations. He's of this nation, or not this nation, the American nation, and he's going to represent what things should be rather than, you know, what they are, and kick some ass, take some names. But yeah, I don't know. I do, like, I'm still so proud of him. I really wish they would bring him back, but whatever.
Oh, maybe they will.
Well, we only seen, I think, one of these. There's like 5 new Captain Americas, and I think we've only seen the homeless kid Captain America come back. And I think he's. It's been a while since I read it, but I'm pretty sure he's LGBT. I think he came back for Pride Month just this year. So maybe, I just love it. I would love to see him drawn by other artists too. Like, I mean, Dale Eaglesham does a good job in this. I think he's the only artist I've ever seen draw him. But I still love the costume. I love the character. But man, was that like Marvel sent us like crisis management kits and stuff, because like I wasn't on Twitter. I mean, I had a Twitter, but I was never logging in at that point, so I didn't get any of it. But apparently, it was like the people were out for blood about this, and Darcy and I, the Darcy Little Badger, the writer of the backup story that introduces Joe, was really in the sights of the angry mob of Dean Cain's and Fox News's and what have you.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts, but I don't need to share them with anybody.
It's funny because like it's like the most. I always like find it funny when people say they don't want politics in their X-Men comics. That's one thing. Like, you can be that stupid that you don't get the metaphor. You can be that dumb. I buy that. When people tell me they don't want politics in their Captain America comic, like, what the fuck are you talking about? There wouldn't the character couldn't exist without politics, without like addressing what it means to be American, what it means to like operate in the Western world and try and be a good person in the hand we've all been collectively dealt. But
yeah, and yes, that that politics is inherently an ingredient in Captain America.
In superheroes, really, because it goes back to all the Nazis that were getting head knocked in the 40s, and then less, happily, the Red Scare and how much that drove early Marvel comics. Politics has always been an essential ingredient. You're always looking at some avatar of what we think is good versus some avatar of what we think isn't, and that is inherently political, and you can like cover it in as much obfuscation as you want, but it's there at the core. And Marvel resonated early on because it reflected the world people lived in. We needed to keep doing that, or else why do this at all? Like, I don't know, go watch Invasion USA with Chuck Norris, which is a pretty good movie, but just watch that on repeat if that's all you need.
Different people take different things out of the same texts, right? We live in a world that has been interpreting similar texts in multitudes for thousands of years. So the comics will be no different. But, it really, for me, that really comes down to the oversimplified, like, reductive statement, a hater's going to hate. And if people want to be mad about something, they'll always be able to find something to be mad about. Whenever new Captain America comes along, does not take away the Captain America that I think means the most to me, or doesn't. Who knows? I've never really thought about it, but there can be as many iterations. It doesn't change. Like, my comic still exists. Like, this is still here. It doesn't go away just because there's a different telling of the same story or a similar story. So I don't have any issue with any of that stuff.
No, neither do I. Obviously.
Yeah, haters gonna hate, man.
Probably my favorite Captain America is Bucky, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, there was something really cool about that.
I liked it that he was an imperfect person who was trying to live up to something. I really liked. And there's that, I don't know how clearly you remember it, but I'm just going to gush about it for a second. He shows up as Captain America for the first time. There's this like line of AIM agents, and he shows up, and they're like, Captain America, holy shit, he's back. He throws the shield, and it whisks uselessly over their heads. And then they're like, it's not fucking Captain America. It's just some like da-da-da-da-da. And then like he takes out a pistol and he like kneecaps them all. And I was just like, this is so fucking good. This is so fucking good. This is Captain America in 2007.
Yeah, I think
that's where America was.
Was it Butch Guice on?
Yep, I think so.
Pencils?
Yes. Yeah. Or Steve Epting. I don't know who did that exact issue, but
I think it was Butch, but I'm not sure. And I think Black Widow is hiding in the shadow, kind of watching him take his first steps as Captain America. It was good.
And Falcon was training him. Man, those good stuff.
Yeah, it's a neat idea, right? It was a good idea. I'm glad it played out. Let's end this before we get to the 2-hour mark. Stay on. I'd love to talk with you for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
But everyone else out there, get the hell out of here. I need to go back to work. But David, thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was like very fun. Very fun.
I hope so.
Yeah, it was. No, it's great. Especially like I'm not familiar with the Avengers early issues at all, so it was a new experience. So I read it once before, but I certainly didn't remember that there was a broccoli alien in it.
The Dabari, David.
Sure, yeah, I should use the proper nomenclature.
Yes, there isn't a lot of meat on the bone though in these old issues, so it was just kind of neat to see.
Oh, I thought you were making a joke about a broccoli person.
No,
there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone.
No meat on that broccoli, but just to see an old Lee Kirby comic that was really mostly fluff, but again, like that one thing iterates and it works in every iteration of Captain America moving forward. You cannot separate him from the frozen in the ice thing, which is really cool. Yep. Which is really cool. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. I don't know what we'll be talking about next week. I don't know who will be here. It's all a mystery to me, but there will be something next Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. And then, of course, the weeks following. And then on August 1st, Hoche Anderson will be here with the return of Chris Sanigan, my lovely co-host, as he returns to his home. And we'll be reading X-Men God Love Man Kills, which is perfect for us to do. So stick around, click like, subscribe to the channel, share with all your friends, throw a comment in the conversation below. It really does help the channel, and we hope everyone has a wonderful week and stays cool this summer. All right. Cheers, everyone.
And I'll be back in the chat next week.